Good day everyone, I am Janice May Escanlas and today we are diving into Module 4 of our e-ed course, Facilitating Learner-Centered Teaching. Specifically, we will explore Topic 1, Motivation in Learning. This is one of the most critical foundation of effective teaching because without motivation, even the best designed lessons fall flat. By the end of this session, you will understand what learner-centered teaching really means, why motivation matters, the different formats of motivation activities, and the theories that explain why they work. Let's get started on this important journey together. Building on our introduction, let's look at what we aim to achieve today. First, you'll grasp the essence of learner-centered teaching, understanding its core question, what will student become? Second, we'll explain why motivation is absolutely vital in this teaching approach. Third, you'll learn to distinguish between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Fourth, you'll discover 6 practical motivation activities format theories behind them. And finally, you'll reflect on various factors that influence student motivation. These objectives are designed to equip you with practical insight for your future classrooms. Following our learning objectives, these slides give you a quick overview of Module 4 as a whole. We are starting with Topic 1, Motivation in Learning, because it's foundational. You see, before we can effectively discuss transferring learning, choosing teaching methods, or selecting instructional materials, we must understand first how to spark and sustain students' engagement. Think of motivation as the essential first step, the ignition switch for all other learning to occur. Moving from our module overview, let's define learner-centered teaching approach. This approach fundamentally shifts our focus from what will I teach to what will my students become. Every discussion you make as a teacher should be guided by this centered question. How will students be different after this experience? It's about optimizing their ability to learn given their unique context. This isn't just a different way of teaching, it is a different philosophy that puts student growth at the very own heart of education, as Green highlights. Connecting to our discussion of learner-centered teaching, motivation is truly the engine that drives this process. Your brain, though only 2% of your body weight, consumes a massive 20% of your energy. Learning is hard work. It demands significant mental effort to build new neural pathways. As Doyle wisely states, whoever does the work does the learning. This means students must actively engage. Our role as teacher is to design experiences where students are not just capable of learning, but genuinely motivated to put in that effort. Kasi without motivation, the engine stalls. Motivation comes from 2 sources. Intrinsic motivation comes from within, sa atin. It's when a student learns when they find the task enjoyable, fulfilling, and fascinating. Think of a child who reads a book about dinosaurs. Simply means because they love dinosaurs. Extrinsic motivation comes from the outside. Example for this is grade, rewards, praise, or even a pressure. Like for example, a student is studying only to pass an exam, is extrinsically motivated. While both are valid, learner-centered teaching aims to cultivate intrinsic motivation. Bakit? Kasi it is self-sustaining. Kasi when a students who are intrinsically motivated, They don't need constant external rewards. Gusto lang nila yung matuto lang sila ng matuto. Elementary lesson plans include a specific section called motivation, a dedicated activity at the start of the lesson to activate student existing schema and capture their interests. Researchers and practitioners have identified 6 common formats or patterns of these motivation activities. Each format has a distinct psychological trigger and is supported by learning specific theories. Over the next slide, we will unpack each one, what it is, how it works, and why it works theoretically. The first format is game-based motivation. The idea is simple. If learning feels like play, students let their guard down and engage willingly. According to William Glasser, choice theory, humans have basic psychological needs for fun and game to satisfy that need directly. Deci and Ryan's self-determination theory adds that students are intrinsically motivated when they experience enjoyment from a task. Wakefield expectancy value theory tells us that games work because they offer a fair chance of success. Yung mga students naniniwala sila na mananalo sila. And Fredrickson's broaden and build theory explains that the positive emotion like joy from games actually broaden students' attention, cognition, action that will build resources to help them to learn. The second format is arousing curiosity. Think about when you watch a movie and the screen goes to black at the cliffhanger. You are driven to find out what happened next. That's curiosity at work. Maslow hierarchy tells us about that beyond basic survival needs, humans have growth needs, including the need to know, understand, and explore. Lowenstein information gap theory says curiosity spikes when we realize we're missing information. And Gestalt principle of closure tells us we're naturally driven to complete what feels unfinished. A teacher who starts a lesson with mystery, a surprising fact, or an incomplete story is tapping directly into these psychological forces. The third format is relating experience. This is one of the most powerful motivation strategies because it makes learning personal. When a teacher asks, "Have you ever experienced something like this?" and a student can connect the lessons to their own life, two things happen. First, for Fishbane expectancy value theory, their expectation of success goes up because the contents feels familiar. Second, per Bandura's self-efficacy theory, their belief in their own competency increases because they can see themselves in the lesson. The result, students are no longer passive listeners. They become active contributors who are personally invested. The fourth format is evoking emotions. We already talked about making learning personal by relating it to experience. Now, we're adding an emotional layer. Think about a teacher who shows a short video of a child struggling to read. Students feel empathy perhaps sadness or concerns. That emotional response make them care about the lesson topic. According to Scudder and Singer two-factors theory, emotion works in two steps. First, a physical arousal occurs. Then the mind labels that arousal as a specific emotion. When a teacher uses a story, a video, or role-play situation, it creates the initial arousal. If the arousal is optimal, not too intense, not too mild, it discourages boredom and pulls students into the lesson. Emotion is not a distraction from listening. It is a pathway to it. The fifth format is pointing out similarity. This builds on our previous discussion about how your emotion can drive engagement. Imagine teaching a new science concept by comparing it to something students already know from daily life, like explaining electricity by comparing it to water flow through pipes. When students see that the new material is similar to something familiar, two things happen. Their cognition load decreases because they build an existing challenge, or knowledge rather. And per Bandura's self-efficacy theory, their belief in their ability to master the lesson increases. Because familiarity is not the enemy of learning. It is the scaffolding that makes new learning possible. The sixth and final format is going with trend. We've seen how emotion and familiarity can motivate. Now, consider the power of what's popular. Students are naturally drawn to what is popular, whether it's TikTok trend, a viral video, or a popular song, or a trending topic. Smart teachers don't fight with this. They use it by connecting lesson content to the current trend. Teacher can redirect students' natural interest toward academic learning. According to Deci and Ryan's self-determination theory, they explain why this is work. When students see that their teacher understands what's relevant to their social world, their need for relatedness is satisfied and intrinsic motivation increases. It's not about being cool, it's about meeting students where they are. This slide is your reference card. We've got covered 6 powerful motivation formats, and this table maps each one of its supporting theories, and key insight. Notice how some theories appear more than once. Self-determination theories support both game and trend formats, and self-efficacy theories support both experience and similarity formats. This tells us something important. These theories are not isolated. They overlap and reinforce each other. As a future teacher, understanding these connections help you choose the right motivation format and explain why it works, not just for your students, but to your peers and supervisor. Beyond the 6 motivation formats and their underlying theories, research by SAS in 1989 identified 8 broader factors that impact student motivation. Notice that almost all of them are within the teacher's control. Your enthusiasm, how you organize the course, whether you make material relevant, how you involve students, the variety you bring, the rapport you build, and the example you use. These are not just abstract ideals, they are daily practices. When you enter classroom with genuine enthusiasm, when you organize lesson clearly, when you connect materials to student lives, when you invite participation, when you vary methods, when you build rapport, and when you use concrete example, you are systematically building a motivational environment. Now, let me leave you with a key 5 takeaways from our discussion today. First, learner-centered teaching starts with a student. Always ask what they will become, not just what will you cover. Second, motivation is not optional. It's the engine. Without it, the hard work of building neural pathways simply won't happen. Third, you now have 6 practical motivation format you can use tomorrow in your classroom, right? Fourth, these aren't random tricks. They're grounded in real learning theories. And fifth, remember that motivation is within your control as a teacher. Your enthusiasm, your rapport, your examples, they all matter. You are not just delivering content, you are creating conditions for learning.
So, transfer of learning. So, ano nga ba yung transfer of learning? Yung transfer of learning is ito yung paggamit ng knowledge or ng skills na natutunan ng bata sa isang situation ay yung pag-a-apply niya sa iba pang situation. So, it means hindi lang natututo yung bata para makapasa sa summative test niya or sa activities, kundi is nagagamit din niya yung lessons niya sa real life situations. For example, natuto yung bata ng addition and subtraction sa math class niya. So, kapag namimili siya sa grocery is alam niya kung ilan yung ipapayag niya and kung ilan yung isusukli sa kanya. So, transfer of learning na yun. Kaya yung goal ng learner-centered teaching is hindi lang matuto yung students, like kundi magamit din nila yung natutunan nila sa iba't ibang situation. So, next, importance of transfer learning. So, bakit nga ba mahalaga yung transfer of learning? First, ito kasi yung ultimate goal ng learner-centered teaching. It means, hindi sapat na kabisado lang ng students yung lesson. Mas importante na naiintindihan nila ito kaya nila itong gamitin sa real life situations. Next is, nakakatulong ito para maging lifelong learners yung students. Kahit tapos na sila sa school is magagamit pa rin nila yung natutunan nila sa profession nila in the future, sa bahay and sa daily lives. And last is, nagiging meaningful yung learning. Kapag walang transfer of learning is puro memorization lang yung nangyayari and mabilis lang din nakakalimutan ng bata mga lessons. Next is transfer learning versus ordinary learning. Sa slide na ito is makikita natin yung difference ng ordinary learning at transfer of learning. So, sa ordinary learning is ginagawa lang ng students yung itinuro ng teacher. For example is, nagsasagot sila ng math problem sa worksheet kasi yun yung activity sa classroom. While yung transfer of learning naman is nagagamit nila yung parehong math skills sa ibang situation. Ayun nga, for example, yung pumunta sila ng grocery store and nabili sila. Alam niya na kung ilan yung ibabayad niya and kung ilan yung konsumo niya. So, ibig sabihin, successful nga yung transfer of learning. In simple words is, yung ordinary learning kasi is yun yung knowing. While yung transfer of learning, ito yung nagagamit na nila sa real life situations. Next is types of transfer. The first is positive transfer. Yung positive transfer is nangyayari ito kapag yung dating natutunan ng bata is nakakatulong sa bago niyang lessons. For example, kung yung bata is marunong magbasa ng consonant vowel words tulad ng me and go, mas madali niyang matututunan yung mga consonant words tulad ng cat and sun. Kasi nga may foundation na siya and mas mabilis niyang matututunan yung bagong lesson. While sa negative transfer naman is ito yung kabaliktaran ng positive transfer. Sa negative transfer kasi nangyayari yung dating natutunan ng bata is nagiging hadlang sa bagong learning niya. For example, yung bata is nasanay na magbasa ng English mula kanan papuntang mula kaliwa papuntang kanan. So, kapag nag-aaral siya ng Arabic is binabasa siya mula kanan papuntang kaliwa. Pwede siyang malito sa umpisa kasi nga nasanay siya sa English. Next is high road transfer. Dito naman is sinasadya ng student na gamitin yung natutunan niya sa ibang situation. For example, natutunan niya sa science na yung kahalagahan ng recycling. So, nung nasa class picnic sila is kusa niyang inilagay yung juice box sa tamang recycling bin kahit wala na siya sa classroom. Ibig sabihin is naisip niyang i-apply yung natutunan niya. Next is low road transfer. Ito naman is yung automatic na kasi nga paulit-ulit nang napapractice yung skill ng bata. For example, dahil sanay na yung bata na humawak ng lapis ng tama, automatic din niyang nahawakan ng tama yung paintbrush or crayons kahit hindi niya ito iniisip or hindi itinuturo sa kanya. And next, backward reaching transfer. Ito naman is nangyayari kapag tsaka lang naaalala ng student yung dati niyang natututunan kasi nga kailangan niya ito sa bagong situation. For example naman ito is kailangan niyang hatiin yung 28 students sa 4 na group. So, bigla niyang naalala yung lesson nila tungkol sa equal sharing and multiplication. Kaya nagamit niya yun para ma-solve yung problem niya na kailangan niyang hatiin yung 28 students sa 4 na group. While yung forward reaching transfer naman is nangyayari kapag habang nag-aaral pa lang yung bata is alam na ng student na magagamit niya yun in the future. For example, memorize niya yung multiplication table kasi nga sabi ng teacher is kakailanganin niya yon sa division and fraction sa susunod na lessons. So, ayun. Next is yung near transfer. Dito naman is nagagamit siya kapag yung natutunan ng bata is halos magkapareho lang sa situation or magkaparehong situation lang. For example, natuto yung student na mag-add gamit yung building blocks. Tapos, ginamit niya rin sa parehong strategy sa worksheet. So, nai-apply niya yung near transfer. Near transfer. And, yung far transfer naman is kapag ginagamit yung natutunan sa ibang subjects or ibang situations. Dito is, kumbaga natutunan niyang mag-classify ng shapes sa math. So, pagkatapos ginamit niya rin yung parehong skills sa group ng iba't ibang animal sa science. Ngayon dito naman sa factors affecting transfer of learning. So, hindi lahat ng students is madaling nakakapag-transfer ng learning. May mga factors na nakaka-affect rito. First is yung similarity between two learning situations. Dito, mas madaling ma-apply yung lesson kapag magkapareho yung classroom activity and real-life situation. For example, gumagamit ng play money sa classroom. Nagtayo ka kunwari ng mini grocery store sa classroom and gumagamit ka din ng play money. Kaya kapag bumibili na yung student sa canteen is madaling nang nakukwenta yung supply niya kasi nga parehas na yung na-experience niya sa classroom sa real life situation. Next is degree of meaningfulness of relevance of learning. Dito is mas tumatatak yung lesson sa bata kapag naiintindihan ng students kung bakit nga ba ito mahalaga. For example, instead na puro worksheets is pinapabilang mo as a teacher ng prutas or ng building blocks yung mga bata. Next is length of instructional time. Dito kasi is kapag sapat yung oras sa pagtuturo and practice is mas naiintindihan ng students yung lesson. Mas maraming time, ibig sabihin, mas madali or mas naiintindihan ng student yung lesson. Like, ilang araw mo nang pinapractice yung multiplication. Ilang araw mo nang pinapapractice sa bata yung multiplication. And bago pa magbigay ng mahirap na problems. So, para kapag kadating nung complex problem na yan is mas mabilis na nila yung masasagutan. Next is variety of learning experiences. Dito, mas natututo yung student kapag iba't ibang activities tulad ng games, group work, and sa mga hands-on activities. For example, sa fractions, gumagamit ka as a teacher ng pizza, drawings, and fraction bars. So, by that, mas natututo yung students kasi nga na-experience nila is yung hands-on activities. Next is context for learners' experiences. Here naman is mas madaling matatandaan ng mga students yung lesson kapag connected ito sa real life. For example, sa measurements is sa measurement lessons, pinapasukat ng teacher yung desk sa classroom and yung mga gamit sa bahay. So, ayun. And next, focus on principles rather than facts. Dito naman is, mas maganda kung yung concept mismo yung naiintindihan ng bata kaysa sa memorization lang. For example, ipinaliliwanag mo as a teacher kung bakit kailangan ng living things ng tubig, hindi lang basta ang pinapamemorize mo. By that is, mas maiintindihan nilang mabuti kung bakit nga ba kailangan ng tubig ng mga living things. And last is yung emphasis on metacognition. Dito is, ibig sabihin is pinapa-reflect natin yung mga students about sa sarili nilang learning. For example, pagkatapos ng activity is tinatanong natin sila kung ano yung natutunan nila, kung ano yung naging mali, and paano sila mas gagaling or mas mag-improve sa susunod. Next, ways teachers can promote transfer of learning. So, paano naman matutulungan ng teacher yung students na matransfer yung kanilang learning? So, first is meaningfulness. Kung here, kinoconnect ng teacher yung lesson sa prior knowledge and real-life experiences ng students. Next is yung encoding specificity. It means gumagamit yung teacher ng iba't ibang activities and situations para hindi lang iisang context. Sa iisang context natututo yung students. Like tulad nga ng sinabi ko kanina, mas natututo yung students or yung learners kapag iba't ibang activities yung ginagawa nila, like hands-on experiences, play, ganyan. Next is organization. Dito naman is sa organization is maayos dapat and step by step yung presentation ng lessons para madaling makita ng students yung connection ng mga ideas. For example, sa organization is hindi po pwede na mauuna yung division and multiplication kaysa sa addition and subtraction. Ganun. And last is discrimination. Dito naman is natututo yung students na alamin kung kailan applicable at hindi applicable yung isang rule or concept. Hugging and bridging strategies. Dito naman is may dalawang strategies daw na tumutulong para mas madaling magkaroon ng transfer of learning. First is yung hugging or yung low road transfer. Yung focus nito is yung repetition or yung paulit-ulit na practice sa mga situations na halos kapareho sa real life situation. Hanggang maging natural na yung paggamit ng skills nila. And yung pangalawa naman is yung bridging or yung high road transfer. Yung focus naman nito is tulungan yung students na mag-isip ng mas malalim and gamitin yung natutunan nila sa iba't ibang situations gamit yung critical thinking nila. So, sa hugging is may 5 strategies. First dito is yung setting expectations. sinasabi agad ng teacher kung saan magagamit yung lesson. For example, ipapaalala ng teacher na yung math is kailangan kapag mamimili siya or magbabayad sa tindahan. Second is matching. Sa matching is ginagawang kahawig ng teacher yung real life and yung classroom activity. For example nito is yun nga yung nagtayo ka ng mini grocery store sa classroom and gumagamit ka doon ng play money para mag-practice na yung bata na bumili. Next is simulating. Dito gumagawa ng role playing or classroom store para maranasan ng students yung totoong application ng lesson. Next is modeling. Here naman is ipinapakita muna ng teachers or dinedemonstrate muna niya yung tamang paraan bago niya ito ipagawa sa students. Ang example nito is yung sa may proper hand washing. Next is problem-based learning. Dito binibigyan ng teachers yung students ng real life problems tulad ng pag-compute ng nagagastos nila or nung baon nila. And sa may bridging naman or yung high road transfer is may 5 strategies doon. Number 1 is yung anticipating applications. Dito is tinatanong ng teacher kung saan pa pwedeng gamitin yung lessons. Next is yung generalizing concepts. Dito is pinapahanap ng teacher sa students yung pattern or yung general rules sa lesson. Next, using analogies. Dito ikinukumpara yung bagong lesson sa dati nilang alam para mas madaling maintindihan or para alam ng teachers kung saan sila sisimula. Next, parallel problem solving. Dito is ginagamit yung parehong skills sa isang subject or situation tulad ng paggamit ng math sa paggawa ng family budget sa APP. Next is metacognitive strategies. Dito is pinag-iisip pinagre-reflect yung students tungkol sa sarili nilang learning para nga malaman nila kung paano sila mas mag-i-improve pa. And ayun, to conclude yung transfer of learning is important kasi nga ipinapakita nito yung natutunan ng students is hindi lang sa classroom kundi nagagamit rin nila to sa real life situations. So as a future educator, dapat tayong gumamit ng iba't ibang teaching strategies para matulungan natin yung mga students na ma-apply yung natutunan nila sa iba't ibang situations. So kapag nagawa nila ito is mas nagiging meaningful and mas tumatagal yung pagkatuto nila.
So, good day everyone. My name is Kim Sigisman. I will be explaining the topic 3 of our module 4, Learner-Centered Teaching Pedagogy. So, topic 3, Teaching Approaches, Methods, and Techniques. So, let's start with learner-centered teaching. So, learner-centered teaching is an instructional approach that place students at the center of the learning process. It encourages active participation, critical thinking, collaboration, and meaningful learning, while the teacher serves as facilitator who guides students toward achieving the learning objectives. So next up is the teaching components. So we have 4 teaching components that are interconnected. So the first one is the approach or the overall teaching philosophy. The overall teaching philosophy or belief that guides how teacher and learning should take place. Next up is method, a systematic procedure that or process used by a teacher to deliver instruction. Next up is the strategy, a careful, planned way of helping students achieve specific learning objectives. And lastly, the technique, a specific classroom activity or skill used to effectively carry out a teaching strategy. So, Next up is the learner-centered approaches, or we have 8. So let me explain one by one. First up is the inductive approach. So inductive approach was students begin with specific samples of observation and experiences before discovering the general rule or principle. So students learn by examining examples first before discovering the general rule. It starts with example and it encourages critical thinking skills. So next up is the metacognitive approach, which students learn by planning, monitoring, and evaluating their own learning. This use the general definition of metacognitive is thinking about thinking, and it promotes independent learning. So metacognitive approach, students become aware of their own thinking by planning, monitoring, and evaluating by how they learn. Yun lang siya. So next is the constructivist approach. So constructivist approach. Students build new knowledge using their prior knowledge. Constructivist approach connects all and new knowledge, and it is activity based. Next up is the inquiry and discovery approach. Students investigate questions and discover answers through exploration. This uses investigation and it also encourages problem solving. So dito, ano lang siya, students uses investigation or kine-question nila yung mga nadi-discover nila. Like, kunya, lalabas yung mga bata. Yung doon, ini-explore nila yung mga iba't ibang clouds. Doon ngayon, magkakaroon sila ng thinking process or magtatanong sila doon sa teacher if like paano ba like kung ano yung mga iba't ibang clouds and kung ano yung mga kung paano nagkakaulan or paano nag-i-snow, ganun. Next is the conceptual approach. So the conceptual approach is a learner-centered approach in which students learn by focusing on big ideas, concepts, and relationships rather than memorizing isolated facts. It also helps learners understand how different pieces of knowledge are connected so they can apply concepts in various situations. Next up is reflective teaching. So students reflect on their experience to improve understanding the learning. So dito, typical question dito is, did where did I go wrong? And ano ba? Saan ako nagkamali? Paano ko to matatama? And other questions. Interactive approach. So students connect knowledge from different subjects to real life situation. So dito, inaano lang natin, pinag-connect lang nila yung mga natututunan nila sa galing sa ibang subjects. Galing to relate situation like sa science, they learn about like how healthy and unhealthy foods are. Tapos sa may math naman, natututo sila mag-compute ng calories or yung mga like fats, mga carbs, mga gano'n. Tapos pwede din nila ipasok sa English yung na yan, or gagawa sila ng menu kung ano yung mga yung gagawa sila ng menu about sa healthy and unhealthy foods, like yung chart na pabaliktad na triangle na gano'n. Then lastly, dun sa may art naman, pwede sila gumawa ng poster or infograph about healthy foods. Next up is cooperative learning. So sa may cooperative learning naman, students work together in groups while being responsible for their own learning. Dito, hindi porket group activity, hindi, di ba, group activity kasi is like group activity is like learning with each other, like we have our own tasks, we have our own task.
Learner-centered instructional method. Ito lang yung approach kung saan yung bata yung center ng learning. Hindi sila basta lang nakikinig sa teacher, kundi active din silang naglalaro or nag-explore at nakikiparticipate sa buong klase. Ang goal nito is matuto yung mga bata sa pamamagitan sa kanilang sariling experience habang ginagabayan lang sila ng teacher. Dahil sa ganitong paraan is mas nagiging masaya at mas madaling maintindihan ng mga bata yung lesson. So, meron tayong 5 types of method. Number 1 is laboratory method, problem solving method, project method, field trip method, and demonstrative or demonstrations method. Number 1 is laboratory method by Lardizabal, Bustos, Buku, and Tangco by 1998. Sinasabi lang dito na yung laboratory method is hindi lang tungkol sa science laboratory. Ito rin yung paraan ng pagtuturo kung saan mas natututo yung mga bata sa pamamagitan ng actual na paggawa or pag-observe at pag-explore gamit yung mga simple at safe na mga materials. Halimbawa na lang is pwede silang maglaro gamit yung tubig, buhangin, dahon, bato o mga blocks. Dahil sila mismo yung gumagawa ng activity, mas madali nilang naiintindihan o natutunan yung inaaral nila. So number 2, problem solving method. Ito yung mga bata mismo yung naghahanap or nag-iisip ng mga solusyon sa isang sitwasyon. Hindi lang basta binibigay ng teacher yung sagot, kundi is ginagabayan lang ng teacher yung mga bata sa pamamagitan ng mga tanong. Dahil dito, mas nade-develop yung kanilang critical thinking at confidence. For example, may toy na hindi magkasya sa toy box. Itatanong ng teacher is, paano natin ito mailalagay? Maaaring subukan ng mga bata na ayusin yung iba't ibang laruan or ilipat ng pwesto yung toy hanggang magkasya yon. Number 3 is project method. Ito yung nagbibigay ng pagkakataon sa mga bata na gumawa ng isang activity or project na connected sa kanilang lesson. Habang ginagawa nila ito is mas natututo sila magplano, makipagtulungan at maging creative. Ang focus nito is hindi lang ang output, kundi yung buong learning process. For example, kung ang topic nila is community helpers, maaaring gumawa yung mga bata ng mga mini community gamit yung mga recyclable materials tulad na lang ng kahon, papel at bote. Habang ginagawa nila ito is pinag-uusapan nila yung mga trabaho ng doctors. Field trip method. Ang field trip method ay nagbibigay ng real-life learning experience. Mas madaling maintindihan ng mga bata yung lesson kapag nakikita nila ito sa totoong buhay. Hindi kailangan malayo ang pupuntahan nila. Kahit sa paligid lang ng school is marami na silang pwedeng matutunan. For example is kung ang lesson ay tungkol sa mga plants at insects, maaaring dalhin ng mga bata maaari silang pumunta sa school garden para lang makita nila yung mga bulaklak, puno, butterflies, habang ino-observe nila at pinag-uusapan yung mga yon. So last is demonstration method. Ito yung ginagamit kapag may mga bagong skills na kailangan pang ipakita ng teacher bago subukan ng mga bata. Kapag nakikita nila na tama yung paraan ng teachers na paggamit is madali nila itong magagaya or natututunan nila ng mas madali yung mga activity. For example is bago sila gumawa ng mga paper folding activities, pinapakita muna ng teachers yung tamang paraan ng pagtitiklop ng papel. Pagkatapos naman ng demonstration is susubukan na rin nila ito ng mag-isa or may kaunting guidance lang mula sa teacher.
So now let us proceed to the learner-centered instructional techniques. So first we have the STAD or Student Team as Achievement Division. So dito, pinag-grupo or nagbubuo ng group wherein balance siya ng mga student na mayroon ng ability to really understand or to really comprehend, and to those people na nasa kumbaga average level of learning pa lang. So dito, nirarank yung mga student so that they will be classified kung saang level sila pasok. So first step in STAD is the teacher present or teacher teach the lesson. So the teacher will present the lesson, of course, to the students. And then second step is the the team study, wherein yung isang nabuong team, they will study together, they will share their ideas, their perspectives and understanding, and those people who already mastered the material will help the other teammates na kailangan pa talagang turuan or kumbaga bigyan ng help. So they work as an encouragement and a support to one another. So the role of a teacher in this level is minomonitor lang niya yung mga students na gumagawa ng activity. While yung mga students, they work together so that everyone can have the full understanding about the lesson. So next is the class quiz. So dito naman, nagkakaroon ng assessment if natutunan ba talaga ng bata yung material na pinresent. Dito din natin na-encounter yung mga activities wherein nagkakaroon ng mga quizzes na one sit apart yung setup. Next is the team study. Dito ay nag-work together na yung mga student to help one another na ma-master yung isang lesson or content. Wherein yung mga students na capable enough na to understand the topic, they will help the other students and until ang lahat sa kanila or everyone is able to really understand or cope with the lesson. Then the third one is the class quizzes. Dito naman ina-assess yung individual understanding ng mga students para makita if effective ba yung team group na ginawa. Wherein, na-assess din dito yung progress and performance ng mga bata. Team and individual get recognition for the good result and improvement. They receive recognition of doon sa mga bagay na na-achieve nila. So last is the team art change. So dito naman, nabibigyan ng chance or ng opportunity yung mga students to work with their other classmates. So next naman is the team assisted instruction. So ito, medyo similar siya kay STAD. Pero, mas nakafocus siya sa individual skill mastery and sa progress ng mga students. Ito ay gumagamit ng pre- and post-test to identify the learning needs of the students. The third technique is the peer mediation. So this is learning with the help of a classmate or tutor who belongs more or less to the same age group ng students. There are different types of pairing students na pwedeng gawin or pwedeng i-apply ng teacher. First is the same group tutoring or peer pairing. Dito, dalawang students within the same class ay mag-work together para magtulungan na ma-achieve nila yung learning goal nila. The second is the instructional learning. So, yung older students, pwede niyang turuan yung mga students na mas lower ang grade level sa kanya or outside the class into a one-on-one or one to a group basis. So, ibig sabihin, pwede na dalawa lang sila at nagtuturuan lang sila or yung isang higher level or grade level ay nagtuturo sa mga batang students sa kanya. Then the third is the monitorial tutoring. So the fourth technique is the partner learning. So dito naman, binibigyan ng chance yung student na mamili ng study buddy niya. Ibig sabihin, yun yung magiging partner niya in learning. This also employs when the teacher gets the students rehearse what they have learned and explore their understanding of content with a partner. So the fifth one is the jigsaw technique. So ito naman, it helps all the students to study and learn all of the materials. And they, through that, they became experts as they teach each others the materials. So now we are down to the number 6, which is the role playing. So this technique is a process by reinforcing the usage of the new topic while making communication meaningful in context, thus helping students see the relevance of the topic in real life situation. So alam naman natin that role play is when the student is portraying the character. So another instructional technique is debate. So debate is actually an age-old teaching technique, no? So matagal na siyang ginagamit. Although debating technique makes use of a formal argument where there are two groups that defend their opposing views of the issue. Its purpose is to help students learn and not to win in an argument. So through debating, nagkakaroon ng or na-apply ng mga students yung critical analysis and how to prepare an argument using facts. They also practice yung communication skills na kung saan they practice yung pakikinig and pagpe-present, and they also practice the delivering ng mga speech and ng mga arguments nila. And also andun yung nakakapag-state sila ng mga effective points or key points to defend their side. So next is the fishbowl. So it is a teaching technique for a large group of students that encourage participation and reflection and gives opportunity for students to hone their discussion techniques and social skills. So this is implemented by means of forming an inner circle and outer circle of students, and is started by teacher through choosing specific discussion prompts and discussion skills that students should include in their conversation, like asking open-ended questions. So number 9 is the brainstorming. So the rule of brainstorming is to think of many ideas, think of different ideas, and to suspend judgment until students have produced many different ideas. So yung brainstorming, tinutulungan niya yung mga students na maging open-minded so that they can think sa mga idea that is not normally na naiisip ng isang students or ng isang tao. So not all of the ideas they arrive at will be equally useful. So hindi naman lahat or ng idea na pumapasok sa isip ng isang tao ay pwede siyang maging useful. But in thinking of many different ideas, they can discover something na talagang valuable or important, So students who practice brainstorming often may become more prolific and less rigid thinkers. So next is the Phillips 66. It is a technique developed by J. Donald Phillips, wherein dito dinidivide yung group or yung isang class into 6 members or equally divided na groups with 6 person. Dito they will pick one person to present the whole point or the whole presentation of the group. So next is the buzz session. So ito naman is a technique or a teaching technique that is employed when the topic is familiar to the students and they are required to share opinions, viewpoints, or reactions. So ito naman, binibreak din sila into a small groups of 2 or 4 persons, and then they will discuss their ideas or their opinions or the issues na nakita nila with the topic, and they will be given a short time to discuss all of those, and then when the time is up, they will be given a chance na yun din ipag-combine yung mga ideas nila and then present it into the class. So number 9 is the brainstorming. So the rule of brainstorming is to think of many ideas, think of different ideas, and to suspend judgment until students have produced many different ideas. So yung brainstorming, tinutulungan niya yung mga students na maging open-minded so that they can think sa mga idea that is not normally na naiisip ng isang students or ng isang tao. So not all of the ideas they arrive at will be equally useful. So hindi naman lahat or ng idea na pumapasok sa isip ng isang tao ay pwede siyang maging useful. But in thinking of many different ideas, no, they can discover something na talagang valuable, no, among those, or very valuable or important, no. So students who practice brainstorming often may become more prolific and less rigid thinkers. So the thing is, brainstorming can be done by individuals or by pairs or by small groups or even a whole class, and it doesn't require so many things, but only pencil and paper or chalk or anything that you can write in, no. Those are the things na kailangan mo lang in brainstorming, because again, in brainstorming nga, talagang mag-iisip ka lang ng mga iba't ibang ideas na pwede mong maisip, because it might be useful or it might be very valuable or important, no, para sa kung ano man yung inahanap mo or sa kung ano man yung tina-target mo na aralin.
Determining instructional materials tools for learning-centered teaching. Ito ay tungkol sa pagpili ng tamang materyales at kagamitan na makakatulong sa mga estudyante na mas mapadali matuto at maging aktibo sa kanilang klase. Principle in the selection of instructional materials. Ito naman po ay gabay o pamantayan sa pagpili ng instructional materials na dapat piliing materials ay angkop sa kanilang aaralin at makabuluhan, at nakakatulong ito sa pagkatuto ng mga estudyante. Realia and a representation of realia. Ito naman po ay paggamit ng totoong bagay o kopya nito para mas madaling maintindihan ng mga estudyante ang kanilang mga lesson. Types of model. Ito ay mga uri ng model na ginagamit para ipakita ang anyo o loob ng isang bagay. Sounds and visual resources. Ito naman po ay materyales na may tunog at larawan tulad ng video at PowerPoint na tumutulong para mas madaling maintindihan ang kanilang lesson. Microcomputer resources. Ito naman ay paggamit ng computer sa pag-aaral. Nakakatulong din po ito sa kanila para mas mapabuti ang kanilang pag-aaral, pag-iisip at paglutas ng kanilang mga problema. Picture and pictorial representation. Ito ay paggamit ng larawan tulad ng photos, drawings at sketch para mas madali po nilang maintindihan ang kanilang mga lesson. Symbolic and graphic representation. Ito naman po ay paggamit ng mga simbolo, graph or chart para mas madaling maipakita at maintindihan ang impormasyon. Projector, viewers, players, and recorders. Ito naman po ay mga kagamitan na ginagamit para ipakita o iparinig ang lesson sa klase tulad ng projector upang malinaw ang kanilang pag-aaral. Resources of media. Ito ay lugar at gagamitan sa paaralan at komunidad na ginagamit para makatulong sa pag-aaral ng mga estudyante. School resources. Ito ay posibilidad sa pag-aaral tulad ng library, laboratory at school garden na ginagamit sa kanilang pag-aaral. Community resources. Ito ay mga lugar sa komunidad tulad ng museum, ospital at pabrika na maaaring puntahan ng mga estudyante para matuto sa totoong karanasan.